Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, when you dive into the why of certain things, there are some things out there that get even scarier and even more confusing than you could possibly imagine. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion, because that's how we do it around here. And if you like how we do it around here, I'm assuming you do, you're listening right now, you can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us over at Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, basically wherever you get your podcasts. Also, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our YouTube channel, and we'd love it if you'd follow us there too. You can find us on social media as well for all sorts of updates. You can look us up at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for any updates that you might need. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest movie news, film reviews, a little bit of television talk, anything about the moving image that we can get our hands on, basically, because we love talking about it and writing about it, and we love it when you read about it. So please come on by. Well, no shocker here, kids. On this episode, we have got even more Hot Docs coverage. We were all fiction all the time this past week and a bit, and we've been absolutely loving it. Hot Docs is still running until May 9th at hotdocs.ca, and if you like independent cinema, if you like documentary film, I would recommend you go check them out because they've got a lot of great stuff going on, and supporting these kind of films is a beautiful thing. On this episode, we are diving into yet another world premiere, and it is a film called Dead Man's Switch, a crypto mystery. It's a cryptocurrency kind of thriller, true story thing that shows us the story of a Canadian blockchain wizard who died on his honeymoon while in India, and then the fate of his investors, $200 million, kind of went into the digital void, and there's a whole mystery around it, and it really highlights the fragility of cryptocurrency and just sort of the nature of financial markets as well, and just how the system is built to make money off of basically nothing, which is what a lot of these things are. And we talked with director Sheona McDonald about sort of the origins of the story and how she got into it all, and she tries to explain cryptocurrency to us a little bit too. I don't know how well it went, but it was an interesting talk, and I certainly hope you enjoy it because I know that I did. Now, I mean, obviously, first off, congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it because on one end, I'll admit, like going into it, I'm like, oh God, cryptocurrency, this is going to hurt my head. But no, there's so much more to it. Like, walk me through sort of how you discovered this story.
Well, funnily, I had a friend who was into crypto and was telling me about Ripple and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I researched into it. This is in 2017 and was just curious, was reading. And then I was having dinner with a broadcaster who was like, pitch me something. I was like, I don't have anything. And at the end of the dinner, I said, I'm sure you have a film about cryptocurrency. She said, nope, go find one. Go. I was like, oh God. And I did. I looked for a year or longer to find a story that, to your point, was interesting and would sustain my interest. And I had, of course, I was playing with cryptocurrency because how can you make a film about it if you don't understand it? So Quadriga was the only game in town. So I had money there. So I got the same notice that everyone else got. And I was like, oh, this is why. I could feel it. I was like, this is why I've got this money. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is the story. So there we were. So it kind of, I think it found me, but who knows?
Well, I mean, it's one of those fascinating things because, I mean, just as the film kind of lays out, it's obviously a real thing and people are using it, but it feels so nebulous kind of all at the same time. And I mean, can you walk me through, I guess, maybe sort of, the research side on your end? Because I can imagine the more you got into it, the more you'd be like, this is a bit of what's going on? Why is this a thing?
I mean, I think I can understand why it's a thing and why people want deregulated or unregulated currency, and the research was intense. So Polly Legier is a researcher who was on board from the get-go and was phenomenal and dug stuff up. And I would keep going to her and going, okay, what's this again? What's this again? Let's figure this out. And we checked and we double checked and we triple checked. And we may even have got our description of payment processors wrong, which I'm doing a little video about. Well, we didn't quite get it right now. And finding the people and who was going to talk and who was going to tell the story. But cryptocurrency is bizarre, right? Like people are buying their $70,000 Canadian dollar Bitcoins right now. But are they spending them? Are they using them daily? Not most people. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of altcoins. So it's hard to understand, legitimately hard to understand, I think, what it all is and what it's going to mean and what the future of it is going to be.
Now, I mean, when you started getting into sort of, I guess, more the traditional disappearance thriller side of the film, like, were you kind of surprised of sort of the things that you started to uncover? Because, I mean, just in watching the film, it was like there were parts where I was almost covering my face, going, "Oh my God, that happened."
Yeah, and we picked what we could for a 78-minute film. I mean, there's more stuff. We also picked what we could, in terms of legal stuff,
Oh, of course,
because
yeah.
you got to be pretty careful about what's real and what's imagined and what's provable and what's not provable and what are people's suspicions. There's still a lot of people who think that they need to dig up his grave and determine whether he's in there or not. There is no shortage of people hoping for that. So it was a real balance between the things you've identified. Here's this story. It's a remarkable story. It's more remarkable because it's set in crypto world. So you have to understand that world. How do you balance those two things?
And I mean, another thing that really stood out is watching it. I mean, as you're going on and talking about Gerald and the thing, like all the things that happen with Quadrigo, and I'm looking at this and they're like, it seems to be such a culture where people are still believe in it and still invested in it and still want to take part in it, but acknowledge its somewhat shiftiness all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know that you can get away from that. There are legitimate, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things, and as much as I made a film about it, there are way smarter people out there about all of this than me. I mean, I think there's all kinds of things. There's people who love the technology and love the potential of the blockchain and love what it can do. And, looking at it from a privacy perspective or sharing documents perspective or future perspective, both in terms of money and in terms of other business applications, health applications, all kinds of things. There's a whole black market. We didn't really go into that in the film, but you can't avoid that the funds in the cryptocurrency world are channeling into not great things. But then look, I mean, Coinbase just had their initial offering the other day and went through the roof. So there is mainstream adoption, but of what? Like of cryptocurrency, but what does that mean? And who is that for? And what does it mean to you? And what does it mean to me? And how much do you have to understand? So it's a tricky question, I think. I think there is a future in this. I don't think we can ignore it, but I don't know what that future will be.
As you were diving into all this, is there anything that surprised you?
Everything. I mean, we did a lot of the same, like, what? Really? As you did. I mean, I think looking at white collar crime or this kind of crime, had Jerry lived, if I'm to assume that he's no longer, he probably wouldn't have done a lot of time anyways. Look at similar crimes. Look, he had a business that was bringing in millions and millions of dollars and no business account and no oversight and I mean, that's kind of remarkable, even though it's a new technology, that he could do that. And I'm not as surprised that people trust, because I don't look into, I mean, I have money that flows through PayPal, but I don't know who runs PayPal. I haven't looked into it. So we do have a trust in people. We have a trust in institutions. We have a trust in business. We have a trust in regulation. So, but yeah, lots of surprises along the way about how it all went down.
No, and I mean, just in it when with it all unfolding, just this like the disappearance and like them going to India, and as you're sort of boots on the ground trying to sort of unfold this story, it felt like everyone was very willing to talk.
Everyone who talked was willing to
Oh,
talk.
okay, all right, fair.
Right? There are people that we identify in the film who didn't talk and didn't want to talk. I mean, there's people, and understandably, there's a lot of people for whom this was a tragic circumstance,
Mm.
depending on where you sit on it, how you see tragedy. But there's family members and people in business and there's all kinds of people who did not respond and did not want to talk. But certainly, ours is more reporters or people involved. The people who were willing to talk were willing to talk. Others were, even some who spoke were concerned about their safety and what they said and who they identified and where they poked holes and that sort of thing. So there was some caution involved for sure.
I mean, and something I think that the film does really well, which I enjoyed, is that it highlights cryptocurrency as something that could be a very good thing, but also as something that could be a very, very bad thing. And I'm kind of curious, how important was it for you to sort of not land on one side or the other and sort of give this sort of, no, this is what this is. We could spin it either way.
Yeah, I mean, I for me, that's true. So it's interesting that that's what comes through. I think that to take any hard and fast position, well, to call cryptocurrency one thing, I mean, I get that we've got it under this umbrella, but it's not one thing. It's many, many different things. All the coins or tokens are doing different things or hoping to help in some ways. Some are, something like Dogecoin that started as a joke the other day went to 50 Canadian cents a coin or something, which people thought would never happen. So what is it now? I don't even know. So to call it one thing that is going to change our lives in one way, I think would be a mistake. So it's so many things that I think it's hard to paint black or white.
Well, and that's interesting because I mean, you're a filmmaker, you're a storyteller, and you're going into something that isn't that feels that like it's moving that it's a moving target. Like, sort of, how do you sort of resolve that when you're, especially when you're editing, when you're putting everything together? Because I can imagine that's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, we went through a lot. We went through sort of the cryptocurrency. Basically with the cryptocurrency part, what do you have to understand? What's important that the viewer understands just in order to understand this story?
Yeah.
Was where we spent our time, offering enough, but not too much. Your eyes don't glaze over. You feel like you come away, oh, I think I get it a little bit more, but you're by no means an expert, but you get it in the context of
For sure.
Story and how it could happen. In terms of Jerry's story and the Quadriga story, also, there's a whole bunch of other things that would make you go, what? That happened too? Picking those again, which ones could we prove? Nobody knows what happened. I mean, when Nathan went to India, he talked to people who were there. So those people had part of the story. But only a couple people know what happened the night that Jerry got sick. And I'm not going to have the answer to that. So it was just a constant back and forth. We spent a lot of time in editing, and we were editing during COVID too. So a lot of time in our little, reaching out to each other and check this and verify that and go back and find that conversation. And can we say this? And then, legally figuring out what we could do as well. So yeah, a lot of stuff. Obviously we did some recreations as well and had to identify those. Actually, when we did a rough cut, people were like, you need to identify those as recreations, because we found a fairly good double. So
is Jerry's story common or uncommon in this world? Because I mean, after watching the film, like, I'm not sure what the answer would be, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon for a cryptocurrency exchange to go under. I mean, I think that if you're going to invest in this space at all, you hear very quickly a couple things: not your keys, not your crypto. So if you don't have your line of code, your token, you don't own it. It's not yours, even if it's on your computer. So take it off and don't leave it on an exchange, which is the other thing. Don't leave it on an exchange. But if you're trading, then you're not going to take it off and put it back on and stuff. So of course people had money on exchanges, but I think those things. So that risk is inherent. Mt. Gox was a massive exchange that went under, I think, about 4 years before Jerry. There's been a bunch since. Quadriga was the biggest Canadian exchange, but it wasn't even top 100 in the world. So in terms of
Wow.
size. Yeah. So it was small potatoes, but it's not an uncommon story. You hear lots of stories about people losing a lot of money on crypto exchanges
And
or things like that.
it amazes me to hear these stories because, I mean, throughout the history of investing, basically, people have loved sort of the get rich quick and the volatile markets. And there are very few happy stories. Usually it's the other way around. I'm kind of curious, how does this reflect, sort of this story just reflect on the grander scheme of human nature and how we haven't kind of changed
We
in
haven't changed.
wanting that sort of get rich quick scheme?
For sure. And just like a curiosity, like even when at the beginning I was like, okay, I have to understand this. So I have to trade a little bit and I have to figure out how you put money in and how you take money out and how you move money. How do you buy your Bitcoin and then you buy some Ripple or then you buy whatever you're buying? And where do you put those and what does that mean? And what's a wallet and all of that stuff? I still got caught up in, oh, maybe I know better than other people. Maybe this penny stock's going to go, oh, look, it went up. It's going to keep going up. Oh, I got to put more in. Oh, I'm going to miss out. So, buy high, sell low, like all the mistakes.
The curse of FOMO.
Yeah. I mean, FOMO's huge, right? And which is why people are buying $70,000 Bitcoin, but people bought them at 25,000, thought they were stupid for 3 years, and now they're worth 70,000, and they're like, "Yay! Look what I did." Is it going to be worth $1 million? I don't know. I don't know.
It's a wild thing to see unfold. And I mean, it's one of those stories that you have to see to believe. And I'm kind of curious from your perspective, like as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, is that what draws you in? Just sort of those stories where it's like, if I don't show this to people, they're not going to believe me.
Maybe. I mean, as a filmmaker, I kind of feel like the stories find me
Right.
often through various means. And then how easy are they to get made? Like this one really was, this will be the last doc I produce because it's hard work producing one-off docs. And so I was quite a reluctant participant, even though when I was like, oh, this is the film, I can feel this is the film I have to make. So and then it was finding really good people to help tell the story and how are we going to do the recreations? How are we going to, like, what do we animate? How do we animate it? A guy named Brendan Cave did all the motion graphics and did a great job because how do you show people in as easy a way as possible? So yeah, I mean, it's a great story. It's a great story with lots of twists and turns. So how do you do it justice? And you keep going back in and fiddling, but it did feel fun to have a good story at the same time as really remembering these are people's lives and it's not a fun story for everybody. And there were both on all sides of it. There were creditors who lost their life savings, some in the film, but others who lost a lot less that was still a lot to them. And a lot of tragedy in the story. So to not poke too much fun at it and recognize there's a weight to it too.
Oh, no, for sure. And I mean, I think that's sort of the magic of it because there is a real balance between, on one end, you have to give us context of what crypto is and how it's being used and all that stuff. But it gets down to Gerald and everything that happened with Quadriga. And it's one of those things where you can really see how something can spiral out of control pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, and my suspicion is, and I don't know this for sure, I don't think he necessarily was starting a legitimate business. I think he saw an opportunity to make money. However, I don't think that when he started it, he could have imagined what would happen in 2017. Like he lost a tremendous amount of money in an Ethereum glitch
Right.
that wasn't recovered, which would have been a big hit. And I just don't think when he started in 2013 that he could have imagined that there would be millions and people just sending him money. I mean, as you saw in the photo, like just piles of uncashed bank checks. Like imagine being 29 years old and waking up in the morning and
Having a
there's
pile of money.
millions
Yeah.
in your bank account and more than you can or need to process. And you don't have, I mean, he did go to business school and he did graduate. But I think it probably was something that got away from him. I don't know that for sure, but that would be my guess. Not that he wasn't scamming people, but probably hadn't set out to do it to the degree that it, that it
Well, I
became.
mean, it feels like the old adage, absolute power will corrupt absolutely. And it's one of those things where you can just sort of track and kind of see sort of somebody losing control of themselves. And I mean, it's happened on Wall Street back in the Depression and in the 80s and recently. I mean, it's one of those things where I think this film really does highlight, as much as financial markets are volatile, the digital crypto financial markets are that much more volatile.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, don't put money into it if you're not prepared to lose it. Do not think of this as anything but a high risk investment that could take everything. Like, look at your account. If you're keeping stuff online, and imagine if you turn on your computer and you go to that account and there's nothing there. Like, so do it. You
A
can
glitch,
take,
a glitch.
yeah,
Yeah.
a glitch. I mean, you can take it off and you can put it on a hard wall. There are places you can store stuff, but even if you get like a little digital wallet, you plug it into your computer. What happens if you punch in your passcode and nothing happens, or you haven't updated the software? I don't know. Who do you call? Like, who's responsible? And so, I mean, I think Amber Scott does a really good job in the film of
Yeah.
expressing the weight of that, right? I mean, talking about, where are you uncomfortable? If your money starts burning, when do you when do you call no? When do you call, when you put the fire on, when you put the hose on it?
No, and you know what? It's one of those things that it's a little scary, but it's good to be aware of. And I mean, I'm just curious, just to start putting a bow on this. Going back for you, like, can you think back into your life, sort of a moment in your life, or maybe even a movie in your life that made you sort of want to be a storyteller, and specifically a documentarian?
No, I mean, I was the kid who liked to watch like 60 Minutes and The Fifth Estate,
Oh, cool.
and
All right.
yeah, so I was curious. I was always curious about real stories,
Right.
and I, what, I've kind of always been a nervous and maybe reluctant. Like, I never thought I'd get into film. I thought like I could do films that made a difference, which, now there's so much out there, and I'm much older, and I'm like, I don't know about that, but that was the incentive. So it was never to get into film. I mean, it's an interesting way to tell a story, but I'm very cautious about, I feel a lot of responsibility in terms of telling people stories and how they're told and what people give you when, I mean, you're conducting an interview now, but how trusting people are when
Right.
you ask them questions, and the permanence of that. And I mean, I directed a season of Emergency Room, Life and Death at BGH, and the weight of being in there and
Oh,
telling those stories was really significant. And I actually have another film that will play at Hot Docs and Doxa this year called Into Light, which is a short about a transgender child who transitioned at 4 years old
oh, wow.
socially. And so that's completely different story. But the weight of people trusting you with their stories is something that's always felt sort of heavy to me in a way. So,
Well, a part of me hopes that someone wants to adapt this into a feature, because I think it would make a good one. But
it won't surprise me if it's underway. It will not
don't
surprise
put it in crypto.
Yeah, that's right. I know if my crew had asked to be paid in crypto early on, they'd be happy right now. They'd be happy. But
But you know what? Thank you so much for the time today, and thank you. Keep doing the good work, and congratulations again on the film.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Nice
All right.
talking.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.